There we are, back to Race Against Death. Here's the first story: The Long Wait. In all of ancient Greece, no warriors were feared more than those from the city of Sparta. They started their training at the age of 7 and lived a rugged life without soft beds, fine clothes, or warming fires. Today, when we use the word Spartan, we still mean a person who lives without luxury, a person who can weather all hardships. Not many choose to live that way, but the story of Michael Brown shows that a Spartan life can still breed strength, skill, and bravery. Michael Brown was born in the city of Juarez, Mexico. He never knew his mother. She died when he was 6 months old. But after living with his grandparents in New Jersey for a time, Michael joined his father in northern New Mexico, and they lived, as Michael put it, in an adobe house on the far edges of a little town called Dixon in the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a very beautiful country of high clay hills and deep canyons. I've been to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. In fact, Caleb and I went there hiking for 10 days one time. Adobe is the mud brick the Indian tribes of the Southwest have used for centuries to build their homes, and Michael grew up as did the Indians of old, without electricity, telephone, or plumbing. He went to the Dixon Elementary School like the other children and became a fine basketball player. Each day he walked the 3 miles to school, and at night he studied his books by the light of a candle or a kerosene lamp, and he got to know the mountains. In the summer, I like to go way up in the canyons on my motorcycle and explore the places where not many people have been, Michael said. Late one summer, when Michael was 13, his love of the mountains and his rough upbringing helped him save a life. It was an early September day in 1980. Two people had come from the nearby city of Santa Fe to go hiking in the mountains near Michael's house. A 28-year-old woman named Susan Peoples, who ran a restaurant in the city, and her 34-year-old friend, David Rand, a construction worker she had met a few weeks earlier. Both of them were in good shape. They were experienced hikers, and they had come well equipped for their trip. The two pitched their tent in a comfortable spot, put aside the dinner they had brought in a cooler, chicken and wine, for they had planned to eat well that night, and sat out a brief rain shower reading and talking inside their tent. When the sun came out, they climbed down to a stream on the canyon floor to wade and splash and cool their feet before dinner. The time went by quickly. Before they knew it, the sun had left them in the shadow, and when they saw it lighting the tops of the mesas as it sank in the west, they knew they would soon be left in the dark. To get back to their tent quickly, they decided to climb straight up the side of the canyon instead of taking the trail. It looked easy enough, but it was nearly a fatal mistake. The mountainside grew steeper and steeper as they climbed. They passed places where rocks had broken loose and had slid down the cliff. Handholds started to pull free as they felt their way. And then, 200 feet up the cliff, with only 30 feet more to go, Susan put her weight on a rock she had thought would hold her, and suddenly found herself crashing down the canyon wall. Flipping outward so that she couldn't use her hands to stop her fall, she hurtled down the nearly vertical slope. The rock thundered after her. She plowed feet first into a narrow ledge 30 feet below, breaking both ankles. Ouch! There she clung to a small cactus. Ow! As the rock smashed into her right arm and fell past her over the ledge, dropping soundlessly to the canyon floor. In the sudden silence, she heard David scrambling down the cliff after her, calling her name. "Susan, thank God you're alive," he panted as he came down beside her. But seeing her mangled legs and arms, he groaned. She was badly injured, and he knew if he tried to lift her off the narrow ledge, they would both plunge to their deaths below. Michael Brown was sitting on his front step in the cooling evening when David Rand's four-wheel drive vehicle came roaring up. Breathless and pale, David told him what had happened. The woman on the ledge, broken ankles. Could he call for help on their phone? All Michael could do was tell him, "We don't have a phone," and send him down the road. But as he sat there watching the rain clouds gather and thinking about the young woman clinging alone to the cliff, he knew he had to do something. He had to help her. Quickly, he went inside and grabbed a blanket and a flashlight. Passing his astonished father, who was coming home for dinner, Michael kick-started his old motorbike and set off down into the dusk. It seemed like a hopeless search. The mountains were so big and he was so small. Still, Michael pushed his way through the bushes, waving his flashlight and calling her name. Susan! Susan! It seemed to get lost in the dark. At last, far above him, he heard a small voice answer, Here! Help! I'm up here! Michael climbed up to her, wrapped her in the blanket, took off his own jacket to make a pillow for her head, and put pressure on her right arm to stop the bleeding. Then he set about the most important task, keeping her awake. She was exhausted and delirious with pain, but Michael knew that if she dozed off to even an instant, and released her hold on that cactus, she would fall. The hours crawled by. A cold, spitting rain started to fall, making the ledge even more slippery and treacherous. Michael talked. He asked her about herself. He told her who he was, where he lived, told her about the basketball games and his dreams of becoming a computer programmer. He held onto her and kept her from slipping, a small, slender youth, but full of the strength of the mountains. It seemed like a nightmare that would never end. The rain and the fog were too dense, the mountains too dangerous for a helicopter to reach them. Finally, hours later, paramedics arrived and bound up the worst of Susan's wounds, but before they could move her, they had to call for a special sling, and the steep cliff interfered with the walkie-talkie transmission. Michael scrambled up the cliff to the ambulance parked by the tent and made the call. They needed wood to make splints for her broken arms. Michael climbed down the cliff to the stream bed to gather sticks. That kid, said one of the medics who helped in the rescue, was incredible. He can climb like a mountain goat. That kid, like many true heroes, couldn't understand what all the fuss was about later on. It's gotten bigger than it should, Michael said, probably because I was so young. I wouldn't say I risked my life. Sure, I could have slipped on any of those rocks and cracked my head open, but I didn't, and I wasn't expecting I would because of all the experience I have had on these rocks. But when the governor proclaimed Michael Brown Day, and when President Ronald Reagan handed him the Young American Medal for Bravery, everyone knew that Michael's rescue was indeed a rare achievement. Wow! So here he is with the woman, trying to keep her awake and help her. That's pretty cool. Well, there's one more story. It's a short one, and we'll read it tomorrow. Well, until then, bye-bye.